Hey guys, I really want to make a video and have done for probably about a month now about a topic which has become quite dear to my heart over the last month after a conversation I had with someone who came to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And it became dear to my heart because I want to make sure that I communicate a certain truth about my own journey and its relationship to this topic. And the topic is selfishness. Now, I'm sure, I won't say who it was, but I'm sure they will not mind myself making this video. But whilst having a conversation, this person had said they were trying to find their route, their goal in life, but they were trying to do it in a way whereby they were not selfish. And initially, I get this correct, they'd had thoughts and feelings that they want to do art and become an artist. And then they felt that this was quite a selfish want to have out of their life, quite a selfish life path or life goal to have, so had decided not to do it. They were working in an office and felt that this too was just a bit pointless, and perhaps they labelled that selfish as well. But they rounded off by saying that it would seem that truly the only way to be unselfish is to live for others. And this hit me hard because it couldn't be any further from the truth in at least my instance. You see, being truly unselfish is a very elusive thing I have come to see over the years. And many people will say that I'm not a selfish person because I do what I do, and normally when you're doing something for gain, you're getting monetary gain. I certainly don't have the greatest time of my life over in Tanzania. I struggle a great deal with the stresses and strains and the difficulties and the traumas, dare I say, that we have to go through over there. It's not nice to have children you love who die as regular as what happens over there. It's not nice to have people sick who you can't help and have to turn them away. But also it's very wonderful when you do have people who are sick that you can help. And amongst all of that, it can appear that people can perceive myself to be a very unselfish person. But I will start at the beginning. I'll say that's wrong, just for the record, and let me start at the beginning. First of all, if someone wants to do art, I can't think of anything more unselfish than needing to express something like that. You know, if life could be described, and if we could do any justice with our linear communication system of words, then perhaps we would have no need for artists in any form, be they even trying to use the linear word communication in the form of poetry. Or be they painters, be they photographers, be they dancers, musicians. If we could totally, perfectly describe and encapsulate this experience, this non-linear, beautiful experience that we call life, with words, or in some definitive way, perhaps you could say that being an artist is selfish. But I say on the absolute contrary to that. Being an artist is far from selfish. For if we could possibly describe the beauty of life, which we cannot, then indeed we might not need painters, we might not need musicians, and so on and so forth. But we need these things. We need poetry to try and express the overwhelming profoundness of the gift of life. And that gift is bestowed upon us in quite an unselfish way. But we can't know for certain until you see the source of creation, if it was selfish or unselfish. The Far Eastern schools of thought, or let's say more closer to, not far east, but let's say the Vedas, the Upanishads, lean towards the idea that the collective God was simply quite lonely. And because he was lonely and bored in his flat line of constant nothingness, he imploded and started the journey of life to hide from himself. This would make God, in some person's eyes, quite selfish for doing so. In others, it would make him quite loving and giving for giving the experience as individual points of awareness and consciousness to ourselves. Now, I'm not saying it is that way or it isn't that way, but I'm just trying to show that truly the motivations for things in life are never quite clear. And that includes the motivations even for existence itself. Who knows if existence is an unselfish or selfish creation? We can't be quite sure. It's best in my eyes to view it as unselfish, as it's a wonderful gift, and I very much enjoy being alive and experiencing the love I have for my wife and the children and my family and the world in itself and the things I get to see and do. I love it. So I perceive it as something to be very grateful for, and thus even if the motivations would be deemed as selfish, I would say that they're not. But you just don't know. Now, many people are carrying on inside the system doing jobs they don't want to do. Most people are doing that. Even a large portion of my life, I'm doing things I don't really want to do. I don't take a lot of enjoyment from siphoning through emails and sorting out the accounts and dealing with staff issues and human resource issues and sorting out builders who are late on deadlines or are trying to overcharge you. These things are tiring and they wear you out. There's also the times which are even worse than that, where you have those whom are sick. You know, we have people in palliative care, etc. And you just can't do anything, and it's just deeply frustrating, and you're left completely buried in God, wondering and asking, you know, what's the sense in this? And it minimizes you. It makes you minuscule when you do that, because you realize that you don't have any true understanding. And it's possibly, to some degree, not our business to understand it all. We, as animals, as human beings and as human animals, are actually selfish within our nature. This is how it is with ourselves. And we are working, many of us, to cultivate a planet which is based more upon compassion and not upon self-service. Now, when you meet someone like myself on your path, and you see me and I'm doing what I do, and you might think this guy is a very unselfish person, I guess unless I'm more open, which I hope to be one day when I gather all of my journey into these books that I'm hoping to write, that I should share more parts of myself. And I should do so as not to give a false impression to people. There is a saying, and I once read that St. Augustine had said this, and then I read that a yogi had said it, and I'm not sure if the yogi has borrowed this from St. Augustine, because it fits St. Augustine's life very well. And I'd have to do more research, but I believe it was St. Augustine. But regardless of who said it first, regardless of who said it, it stands true in my life and everybody's life. Not in every instance, but it does stand true. And the sentence is, a saint is a sinner that never gave up. Now, I'm not saying I'm a saint, except via my birth name of St. Julien, which has nothing to do with this topic, for all I've been accosted a few times by people for calling myself a saint. Can't help what's on my birth certificate. I know what this means. Because even if you are not a saint, and you are someone who is trying to do good works, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're trying to do good works to save yourself, because many people who have been a sinner, they turn to God and God lifts them back up again. And this is what a Christian would call salvation. And good works precede salvation in my eyes. When God finds you again and the prodigal son returns to him, it actually says in the Christian text in the Bible that he's already got the good work set out ready for when you are saved. So that which has happened in my life, he already had it preordained that I would do it if he managed to pull me back to himself. And he did. And I managed to claw my way back to God. But inside you, if you have indeed sinned, if you have lived a life where you've lacked empathy for others, if you've hurt others with your behaviour, which I have done in my past, I have hurt friends by being sexually immoral. I have hurt loved ones by telling lies. I have hurt myself, my own temple, and badly influenced friends around me using substance abuse and alcohol, and my words as well have not always been pleasant in this world. And these things exist in your past, but they make up a foundation of your being as someone who has started to seek. Because once you hit the very bottom, the bottom pit of being a sinner, as it were, or someone who's just not doing what they should be doing with their life, in a moral being, and you reach back and God pulls you up, doesn't matter who you are, if your moral compass comes back into tact, you have a burning guilt in you for what you've done. And that guilt can drive you to want to do better. And thus, when God calls you, or in my instance called me to Tanzania to serve others, you better believe that in among there, of course, there was purely the fact I'd cultivated in fasting and prayer a new state of consciousness for myself. That which they call the Christ within, or just understanding that love is the most important thing. But you have to understand as well that within inside the foundation of all of that, that guilt still existed. I still felt guilty for the past I'd lived and the things I'd done and the wrongs that I'd wronged upon people in this planet. And when you get a chance for service, slowly but surely you get a chance to extinguish this guilt, bit by bit by bit. And the service to others can almost become selfish. Because the more you look out for others, the more you burden yourself with those who are calling out to God. And the more you say to God, burden me. And this is literally what I did. I'd fall on my knees and I'd say, I'd feel like I was close to the edge of all I could handle, and I'd say, burden me. Burden me more. Give me more children to look after. Give me more difficulties to sort out. Give me more people to help. Don't be afraid to burden me. I'm happy to take the burden. And I was happy to take the burden because, first of all, I understood that God would help. But there was still physical work to do. I understood the love of Christ would lighten me and carry me into all I was doing. But also somewhere in me, I understood that in a very selfish way, perhaps, and I perceived that it probably was, that the more of others I took on, the more I felt an ability to forgive myself for those things I felt guilty for. Now, I'm not saying that doing good deeds balances it out and eradicates it, but for I as a human being, for all I knew God had forgiven me. I knew He had, of all of that I'd done wrong. He made that clear to myself whilst I was fasting. I was forgiven. And He was lifting me up. But I as a person, I couldn't quite let go of the guilt and forgive myself. And part of me selfishly used looking after those who needed the assistance that God allowed me to provide were healing me as well. And for those looking out who can't see my internal workings, they would say, hey, look at that guy, he's so unselfish, but inside there's something very selfish, at least somewhere inside me, was going on. And this is why I don't think there is ever a true means to be completely unselfish. I don't think we can be perfect, in short. Now, another way to perceive it is that all forms of desire are indeed selfish, of course. But if then you wish to be an unselfish person, you fall into the trap of desiring not to desire. Because if all desires are, as it is taught and kind of falls down to, in a very open way, it's open to interpretation, but if desires are a selfish aspect of the human life, which is a necessity as well at the same time, then when we desire to be unselfish, we fall into that trap. And this is why I don't think there is a true root of complete unselfishness. We can live for others, but that doesn't have to take the form of looking after the sick. It doesn't have to take the form of running an NGO, in my instance. It doesn't have to take the form of, I've seen Coptic monks who have gone to baptise lepers, which has brought great hope to them, to those in the leper colonies. There's still a leper colony in East Africa. I've seen people completely surrender and sacrifice their life for many, many years, for 20 years, in service of caring for a disabled member of family or other person's children, or children without parents, or special needs children in difficult positions in situations like the ones we care for. I see other people doing this also. Now, if you perceive all of that to be unselfish, that is their journey, but those people need things. For instance, I couldn't do what I do if I wasn't listening to music. I couldn't do what I do if I didn't come back to the West and see hope in art. But predominantly with myself, it's music. But you see, just as I am being unselfish, serving people to, in part, eradicate my guilt at one point is how it felt. The burden of sin that I'd committed became a driving force, not completely, it wasn't the only driving force, but in part, for myself to want to do more good and to help more people, because it was selfish, because it was making me feel better. I didn't need it, but physically, psychologically, somewhere in me, I had to have that. For all I know, I knew God had forgiven what I'd done. But there's no difference between that and someone painting a beautiful picture which stimulates powerful emotions in people, or beautiful music which brings soothing and healing into the lives of millions or thousands or even one person. And why are they doing the music or the art? Because they feel they want to and they love it. So you could say that's selfish. But we shouldn't get into this trap. Because then the selfishness all falls down to perception. And if you just tweak your own perception, you can start to understand that there are ways to live our lives that are more beneficial for the planet. And there are, of course, ways that are completely selfish for the planet. You could have someone who chooses to rob a school of their funding so they can buy a sports car. Obviously, they are a very selfish person and they deserve any negativity that arises within them. But if you have someone who might want to express a song in their heart via poetry or painting or music, then I don't think that selfishness is a way I could comfortably label that. And if you are going to label it that way, then understand that even when I am living a life which many perceive to be selfless, at the very core of what I was doing for many years, and perhaps even to this day today, there was still a selfish aspect of it. Because I still fear the sinner I was. I don't want to be him ever again. And the more I help more people, the more I burden others, the more children I wake up and see at my home that I have to look after, the less chance he ever has of returning. And he becomes just a tiny white dot at the end of a corridor. But the less children who would be there, if there was just one child, there would always be a chance of relapsing. You see, there's always a selfish aspect to it, is in short what I'm trying to say. And selfishness and selflessness is a very difficult thing when you truly get into it. But don't ever perceive myself as a completely selfless man, because I am not.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow the channel and with it help more children here in Tanzania. Also, don't forget you can support our work by sharing with children in crisis here, be it sharing for a particular need or even sharing one-on-one support for education, housing, food and medical care. It can be done for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee a week back in the West after all. Just visit www.sharetanzania.co.uk to find out more. Lastly, remember you can also support us via Patreon, www.patreon.com/featherstail, and help keep us here in Tanzania to continue our work. The links for the website and for the Patreon are in the description box of this video. Love and light, guys. See you soon.